So I recently went on a backpacking trip. It was a short and beautiful backpacking trip in down East Maine, the Cutler Coast Trail. It's beautiful, right? So it's an 11-mile loop, and most of the hike is along the coast, and so you get to see the rocky shoreline and just ocean, uninterrupted ocean as far as you can see. It's really beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful spots in Maine. And there are campsites halfway through the loop. And my friend and I, we were going to hit the trail early in the morning and hike into the campsite, sleep under the stars, and hike the rest of the loop the next morning. Spoiler alert, the trip was a disaster. It was terrible. It was mostly me just awash in tiny tears and hating all hiking ever. And I spent most of the trip just feeling shame and just a lot of envy. So before I talk about the trip, I'm going to say a few words about strength and about bodies. So you may not be able to tell, looking at me from down there, but I used to be a very physically strong person. And I developed and was committed to being physically strong because when I was young, I hated my body. I was socialized to hate my body. I was short and fat and black, and I was not taught that my body was beautiful or capable. And so to combat those feelings, when I was 19, I dove into weightlifting, and I liked it. When I was in my early 20s, around 21, I started taking Taekwondo, and I found out that I liked it, and I was really good at it. I learned that I built and developed muscle pretty quickly. I was strong and I was powerful. I can remember going to Taekwondo tournaments and getting into these sparring matches with these thin white women, and I would demolish them. It was very satisfying. So I was really very proud of my capability. I learned to really value my strength. And eventually I got really serious with weightlifting. I used to follow weightlifting routines in books. I watched all the videos about how to perfect my deadlift and my push press, my one-arm snatch. When I moved to Maine, I joined like a crappy gym. I used to live in Brunswick when I first moved to Maine, and I joined this crappy, dirty gym. It was amazing. And when I moved to Portland, I joined a boot camp gym. And I found myself a buddy to keep me accountable with my workouts. An accountability buddy. Isn't that clever? So, and I feel like I should name my accountability buddy now because she's the only person other than me in this story, and she happens to be my backpacking buddy. Her name is Kate. I was going to do this thing where I was like, let's call her Bait or Great, but I'm just going to say her name. Her name is Kate. And in our accountability buddy relationship, I was the one who was motivated. I was the one who had the stamina, the endurance. I was the one who was strong. Kate would talk to our mutual friends about what a powerhouse I was. While I was there, she would talk about this in my presence, and I'm not one to feel full of myself, but I have to admit that it felt real good. I would kind of be coy and go, no. But it was very, very important to me. Kate was not someone who lifted weights. She used to always be afraid of lifting weights. And I used to say things like, oh, you start out light, and then eventually you get strong like me. As you can tell, I felt like I was the shit. Until I got sick, and I wasn't anymore. So the first time I got sick was in 2015, and I was diagnosed with a very rare sarcoma. I call it my boutique cancer. It's very top shelf. And it's a sarcoma that normally affects young white men, ages, I think, 13 to 25. I am none of those things, but that's the cancer I got. Very special. And for whatever reason, I got through 2 years of treatment, of all sorts of treatment under the sun, fairly unscathed. It's kind of remarkable. I would, when my white blood cell count was high enough, I would go to boot camp. When I was feeling low energy, I would work out at home. I felt I was kind of amazed at my capability. Kate was also amazed at my capability. And that was roughly 2 years ago. I've been 2 years cancer-free. But recently I got sick again, just for a week this time. Not that long ago, it was early July, I got sick. I didn't eat for 5.5 days. I have dubbed that week Evacuation Week because that's what it was like. And so I didn't eat for 5.5 days, and I lost a lot of weight. And with that weight, I lost a lot of muscle. So I became really weak and exhausted all the time. I shook a lot. I still shake a lot now. This was a few months ago. I felt like my legs couldn't carry my weight. And I went from being able to squat a significant amount of weight, you know, barbell squat, to being able to squat like 55, 65 pounds. It was really disheartening. And all through that, my accountability buddy, she is solid gold. She was right there with me. She would tell me, you know, she would tell me if I felt like my body couldn't handle working out, to just take it easy. She would encourage me to go to the gym with her. But as I was getting weaker, she was getting stronger. And shortly after I was sick in July, we decided that we would start lifting weights together. And as I said, Kate was really anxious about lifting weights, but we decided that this was the thing we would do together. And I was excited to try to work on getting my strength back. And it turns out, Kate is very good at lifting weights. Kate is very good at lifting weights. She was quickly getting stronger, and I just kept feeling like I was getting weaker and weaker. I would have to ask her to help me lift weights off of myself when I'm doing the bench press. It was very humiliating. And I have to be honest about that. It was really humiliating for this person who admired me for my strength to have to be getting stronger and have to help me with my weightlifting. And it's just this weird thing to be jealous of your friend, because you want the best for them, you want them to be happy, you want them to be healthy, you want to be proud of your friend, and so you feel all of this shame about being jealous of your friend, and you're angry at yourself for being jealous of your friend, but you can't tell them that because you want to maintain the relationship. It's just, you know, it's a little weird if you talk to them about your jealousy about them. So you end up just stuffing all of these feelings, and you just stuff them, and then they kind of sit in you and make you heavy, and you're full of, you know, you're just caught in this inertia. And to be honest, that's where I've been since July. Kate's been working out, lifting, getting stronger, and sometimes I come along, but I'm mostly stuck in inertia. I'm mostly feeling just that cycle of shame and envy, a little bit of damaged pride. So that's where I've been since July. So what do I decide to do? I decide to go backpacking with Kate. I decide that it's a great idea for the two of us to shove our packs full of a bunch of shit and walk for 5 to 6 miles for 2 days straight. I think it's just brilliant. So it's just a brilliant idea. So I love Kate. Kate is like one of the most important people in my life, and so I knew that the hike would be good in that kind of way, in that kind of bonding way. So we hit the trail, the Cutler Coast Trail, at around 9 o'clock in the morning, and we've hiked before. We've hiked together. We've done some pretty intense hikes together. But the second I hit the trail, I immediately regret it, like immediately. About 5 or 10 minutes in, I'm feeling like I can't do this anymore. So my legs feel a little strong, but I'm like shaking, my body's reverberating. And of course, I don't tell Kate this. So I'm hiking behind Kate because I don't want her to hear me cussing and kind of whimpering. So I'm walking behind Kate, and every now and then she'll look back and she'll check to see if I'm okay, and I'm just like, oh, okay, let's rest for 1 minute and I'll just keep going. So the beginning of the hike that's what it was like. We would walk for about 10 minutes or so. I would sit down and rest, and then for about 2 minutes, and then we'd get up and we'd get started again. And to kind of cope with this terrible feeling that I'm having, this feeling of shame and some envy, because I have to say that Kate is not sweating. I'm like drenched in sweat and breathing heavily, and she's not really bounding, but it looks like she's just bounding along. So to try to distract myself, I try to focus on nature. I love nature. I love being in the outdoors, and the the scenery at the Cutler Coast, on the Cutler Coast Trail is really gorgeous. It's really wet there, and it's really shaded, and so there are all these different textures of green and all of these different mushrooms that I'm looking at. And ooh, look at that mushroom right there. It's an orange mushroom, and it's like, looks like it's kind of fluorescent. And Kate is in front of me taking pictures and bending down and looking at all the scenery. And I know that I can't bend down to look at the mushroom because one, I can't stop. Because if I stop, I'm just gonna fall over. And two, I can't bend down. My pack would just fall over my back and I would just end up in the muck. So like I said, it went on like that for quite some time. About 1 mile in, I decide that I actually had had enough. So in the beginning of the hike, I was doing like, I'm not an optimist, but I was doing like that optimistic self-talk. I was like, come on, you got it, you're strong, keep going. Very quickly, that turned into kind of this whimpering, like, I can't. But, you know, Kate can't hear that because she's in front of me, but I'm really, So about 1 mile in, I was like, that's it, I can't do that. I sat down on a rock, and I was really sweaty, so maybe Kate couldn't see that I had like tears, like tiny tears, but I was really having tiny tears. And so Kate offered to carry my pack. What do you think I said? I said no. I said no because, you know, I have all of this pride around what my body can and can't do. And so I was willing to just keep trying to push myself, and I wasn't really willing to admit that I couldn't keep going. And I didn't want Kate to feel, to know that I was the pathetic one. I didn't want people passing us to think that they had to help us. All my pride got in the way. And so I said no. So we went back and forth like that for a while, and eventually I acquiesced. And I think she said to me at that time, she was like, well, I can carry your packet. You know, I'm doing all right so far. I'm not even sweating yet. So she put my pack on the front and her pack on the back. And all I had were these hiking poles. I don't even know why I had the hiking, I have no weight, there's no, anyway. And that's how we covered the next 3/4 of a mile. So we come through, at the Cutler Coast, on that trail, you're in the woods for about 1 3/4 of a mile, and you come out, and you're in this, there's still trees, the trees thin out a bit, and you can look over the edge of the world. It's just really beautiful. Now, mind you, we were supposed to be hiking 5 miles in. We get to the opening, and we immediately say, this is where we're camping. We're gonna camp right here. We're not gonna camp in the designated spot, we're gonna camp right here. When the sun starts to set, that's when we'll set up camp. So that's what we did, and it was really beautiful. The next morning, the same thing happened. We were able to walk I was able to carry my pack for about 1 mile, and then Kate took over. And we booked it out of there very early in the morning. We got to the car, I pooped in the weird toilet, and then we had breakfast at Helen's in Machias. People know Helen's? Yeah, Helen's. They rebuilt. It's a beautiful place. And that was it. Then we talked, Kate and I talked about how terrible the hike was and blah, 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 but I never told Kate that I spent the majority of that hike watching her back as she's like just having no problem, and I'm like behind her dragging it. Didn't tell her I felt, I spent the majority of that hike just roiling with envy and some shame. And I'm still trying to figure out ways that I can manage those feelings, because I want to keep working out. I want Kate to still be my accountability buddy, and I can't let myself get discouraged because my friend Kate is getting stronger as I'm getting weaker. And so I haven't figured out how to do that yet, other than just leaning into her support and letting her support me as I'm trying to figure out what my body can do now, and trying to figure out how to be patient with myself. And after that hike, that terrible, terrible hike, we decided we're gonna try again next year. And fingers crossed, I will be ready to at least hike 3 miles. That's my hope. Thank you.
Woo! Samaa Abduraaqib.